Good evening and welcome to Artists Talk on Art. I'm Jacqueline Sferra Rada, Secretary of the Board of Artists Talk on Art and an artist. Tonight's panel is celebrating the 100th anniversary of Surrealism. It's my pleasure to introduce the panel moderator, Jay Gidwitz, a San Diego surrealist artist who has gathered together a dynamic group of contemporary surrealists from various locations. So tonight we have we have four artists in total: Jay from San Diego, Vincent from Houston. I'm sorry, I can't get the names correctly. Another artist from Lincoln, Nebraska, and the last from Berlin. And Jay will give you more details, of course. Okay, now I'd like to say a bit about Jay. He's a classically trained artist working at the intersection of surrealism and emerging technologies. Since the early 2000s, he has been creating surrealistic art that explores psychological themes and the subconscious mind. His imagery often reflects fantasies, visions, and inner demons, offering a window into the human psyche. Beyond his personal creations, Jay is a prominent figure in the surreal art community. He serves as an editor of Surrealism Today, a platform dedicated to contemporary surreal and imaginative art. He is also the founder of Surrealism.tv and Surrealism.ai, initiatives that further his commitment to the genre. In 2022, Gidwitz launched the YouTube channel Surrealism Today, where he shares mesmerizing dreamscapes and explores surrealistic themes. The channel has garnered significant attention, amassing 5.2 million views in less than 3 years. And with that, I turn this over to Jay, who will introduce the other artists and give us a little bit about the history of surrealism. Jay?
So first, before we begin, I'd like to say thanks so much, Jacqueline, and express my gratitude to you and the team at ATOA, and for the opportunity to participate on the panel on this centennial of the Surrealist Manifesto. Your commitment to fostering artistic dialogue continues to inspire and enrich the artist community. So, as Jacqueline mentioned, my name is Jay Gidwitz. I'm an editor at Surrealism Today, which is basically a website that attempts to promote imaginative and surrealist artists. So, I'm going to start with the agenda. So, I'm going to introduce each of the artists, hop into a brief history of surrealism, and then we'll jump into the artist presentations and then go into the discussion. So Kristin Kwan is an artist making illustrative paintings with a bent towards the otherworldly. She works, let's go to the next screen if you can. Thank you. She works primarily in oil on panel and building up her vibrantly colored images in thin layers. She's inspired by both the natural world and by legends and myths, using elements of fantasy and allegory to explore themes of life, death, and rebirth. Ela Zdunek, apologies if I'm saying your name wrong, is a Polish photographer and collagist currently based in Berlin, Germany. Her signature style are disquietly, predominantly grayscale compositions focused on the concept of identity and seen through and distorted by external perception of others. Her style is influenced by silent films and historical theater, which is reflected in the repeated motif of a mask and faceless puppet-like characters. She has previously been exhibited both locally in Berlin as well as in New York and London, and her works have been published in several magazines, among others, Heck Mag, The Adroit Journal, and The Door is Ajar. Together with a group of other collage artists, she illustrated Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and the book has been published recently by Collage Institute. She's also a popular cover artist in the Berlin music scene. Vincent Fink also joins us. He's an award-winning artist based in Houston's Arts District who began his signature Atlas Metamorphosis series in 2010. featuring detailed grayscale Sumi ink drawings inspired by a lucid dream, while also developing his sacred geometry surrealistic paintings. His background at the Art Institute of Houston, particularly in life drawing and polygonal modeling, taught him to deconstruct visual elements geometrically, skills he carries through his career from graphic design to becoming a self-employed artist. His work has been exhibited internationally in museums, galleries, digital and print publications. Can we hop on to the next slide? So, what is surrealism? Um, I would say it's both a genre as well as an art movement. But it started as a cultural movement in the early 20th century. It seeks to explore the dreamlike and irrational aspects of the human experience. It was launched in 1924 with the Surrealist Manifesto by Andre Breton, and it aims to break free from conventional thought by combining unexpected images and ideas to challenge reality. Artists and writers involved in the movement, like Salvador Dali and Rene Magritte, often created works that depicted bizarre and fantastical scenes aiming to unlock the unconscious mind. Uh, Surrealism encourages people to embrace their imagination and see things differently, using creativity as a way to escape rote modes of thinking. And I would say today, surrealism is still with us. Contemporary artists and filmmakers draw inspiration from these early artists and innovators, and you can see its influence in paintings and sculptures, in the stories we tell, and the films we watch. And surrealism invites us to let our imaginations run away with us and reminds us that the world we know is just one version of reality and that other worlds are ready to be imagined. Can we please hop on to the next slide? So these are the most iconic images. Persistence of Memory by Dali is sort of playing with the concept of memory and time and the human experience. And then the next slide shows Rene Magritte's The Treachery of Images. This is playing with the concept of, you know, the image of a pipe is not a pipe. The concept of a pipe is not a pipe. Like the reality of the thing is different from the idea of a thing or the word of a thing or the image of a thing. Let's hop onto the next screen. And then since the initial surrealistic movement and the Surrealist Manifesto, I would say there's been a number of movements that emerged that were influenced by surrealism that explored similar styles or themes, and they all sort of developed their own distinct approaches. These are, I would say, the major ones. Um, and but yeah, I think ultimately it's just a general genre as well as, you know, a specific movement that was led by Andre Breton. So let's hop on to the next screen. Okay, so just I'm going to share a couple pieces of art, but we'll primarily focus on the artists in the panel. Let's keep going. So this was just sort of a exorcism of thinking about the aftermath of COVID. So this is basically like supposed to be a digital print that just goes on repeat. And it was just playing with the idea of I think I called this you know, driven mad by fake news, or woman driven mad by disinformation or something like that. It was just sort of sarcastic after COVID. Let's keep going. And this is another image. This is also just supposed to be a digital video print that's just sort of looping endlessly, and this is playing with the idea that the lower portions, or sorry, the more cognitive elements of your mind are controlled by the more primal elements of your mind. So there's a concept in cognitive psychology that's like when you think you're making a decision, it's actually your brain has already made the decision, and you're sort of backwards rationalizing the decision, or sort of telling a story about your telling a story to yourself that you're then going to be able to communicate to other people. But it's just sort of this concept that like our conscious mind isn't always the one sort of pushing the buttons. So let's keep going. Thank you. And then this is sort of what I've been doing for, I would say, the past 2 years. So this is video that it's got music to it. It's basically a 12. Sorry, can you turn it off?
No.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, I meant to turn it off. But this is basically a 12-hour video that just sort of goes on, and it's sort of more of the type of thing that would be sort of in the background of a bar or a club or something like that, or maybe an art gallery, and it just sort of goes on and on. It's just exploring these surrealistic science fiction dreamscapes. So with that, let's go on to Kristin Kwan.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I don't know. Let's see. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm an artist, and I've always kind of just made exactly what I want to make, and try not to edit, I guess, the ideas that I get. And I feel like oftentimes that leads to kind of what I'd call surreal imagery or fantastic elements in my paintings. Although I wouldn't say that's something that I always intentionally include. I think when an idea comes, I try to just take that idea, whatever shows up, and then that's what leads to a lot of the surreal imagery in my paintings. So the first image here I've got, that is a painting, one of the larger paintings I've made. I tend to work fairly small and tight. I've always really enjoyed Northern Renaissance paintings and the kind of very tightly rendered details that you find in those, like a lot of times foreground plants that are just so much love and care is put into the rendering of these small elements, but the whole picture itself often comes across as kind of unnatural, and has a oddly surreal look to it, I would say. So lots of times my paintings have kind of been inspired by historic art, especially this like Northern Renaissance art. I would consider a favorite, and you can see that in this painting in particular. In the pose, the draping, and but with a lot more of a surreal kind of scene. Next slide is so this is just a small portrait of a goat, obviously, but there's inspired by the myth of Amalthea, who was like the nursemaid of the god Jupiter, who he ended up breaking her horn. And then we get the modern idea of a cornucopia from this broken horn of this goat who nourished a god. But originally, the painting wasn't. This is what I'd say a good example of most of my art isn't. It's not usually created with the idea, with the story originally. The story usually comes afterwards. So the first thing I thought of was just wanting to paint a goat, really wanting to paint a goat, and then like different kind of textures or lighting that feels like it would be exciting to paint, and different elements become included, and the story kind of grows around it, and often simultaneously as I'm making sketches. So this became Amalthea, but originally it was just a painting of a goat I wanted to make. Next slide. So this painting is from my most recent show here, which just opened. It's one of the more recent paintings I've made. I really enjoy making these tondo paintings. I think the circular format's really interesting, with not having any kind of corners. But this is a piece that started. All my pieces start with very small thumbnail sketches that usually just have like it would be fun to paint, and then X. So there was like just this kind of pose in a circle with a kind of intense expression, like looking over the shoulder. But as I painted it, it really became a very personal piece, just about some of the pain in life that has been in my life recently. But again, like it starts out as very much just a simple thing that I want to paint. So in this case, like the pose and the facial expression, which then develops over the course of many, many months to become something much more complicated. The idea, I would say, grows as the painting is made. Next slide. So this is, I would say this is a fairly surreal piece. I really enjoyed making this piece. I love flowers, irises in particular, but as many of my paintings go, I started with just like an image that popped into my head, and really had zero meaning attached to it. And so the painting, oftentimes people will ask, I think many artists have this experience, what does this painting mean? Or what's the story behind the painting?
Yes.
And then,
God, yes.
yeah. Yep. And oftentimes they'll give you what they think, which is just about my favorite thing ever. But this painting in particular has really does not have a narrative like driving force that when I created it. It didn't mean something specific, but people often will, especially with these kind of very, I'd say, evocative images, they look like they could mean something. It seems like people are very attracted to building their own story on top of an image like that, which is something I enjoy most about sharing my art. So the next slide. This piece was one of an ongoing series of just cat's heads. And really the impetus for these cat's heads was a show that I participated in, which had a cat theme. But I thought it would be fun just to paint just the ball of a cat's head, really, mainly because it's just so fun to paint. They're so fun to paint straight on, those like glowing glass eyes. And then, I don't know, they kind of create this like excuse to add different textures, different flowers, which have always interesting colors and textures and light, to just enjoy painting it as a physical process. So this painting is called Mimer's Well, and I thought it would be fun to paint one of these cat heads in a pool, kind of as an interpretation of the myth of Mimer, the guy who Odin's had. I don't even know the specifics of the whole story. I'd have to look it up. I did when I painted the painting, and all those things are going through my head. But ultimately, it was kind of an excuse just to explore like the different kind of light and color, and with this kind of myth overlaid on top of that. But again, it's like it starts with the image, and then the myths kind of collect on top of it. Next slide. So this piece is called The Threshold, and I painted this after the 2017 eclipse, where I live here in Nebraska. We were in the path of totality, and so it did have a personal experience that was the inspiration for it. And so it was a sunny day. We got to watch it right from my backyard, and it was an incredibly moving experience, something I'd never seen before, and I would love to see again, but I don't know if I'll ever have the chance. It was much more emotionally just a kind of shocking and a visceral, strange experience. it was much stronger than I'd expected. And after that, I just couldn't get this image of the eclipse out of my head. So anyways, I made some sketches, and this was one of them that I ended up getting made into a finished painting. Next image. Sorry, next. Yeah, there we go. This painting was for a group show that had a mushroom theme. And again, I'd say this is another more surreal painting that I've made that looks more like I would call a standard surreal painting. This was, again, just like an image that popped into my head. I thought it'd be very interesting to paint one of these bridal veil mushrooms with this kind of pattern, this veil it has over top. But over the course of painting it, like all kinds of different things like become intertwined with the original, just the visual idea. You get a lot of I guess maybe like free association, that you start thinking of other things that look like this or make you think of this. And I know, like, I was looking at Tesla towers and just all kinds of stuff, because you start to associate ideas and they get layered into there. I don't know if it affects the art for other people, but I know for myself that they usually collect a lot of like a lot of browser tabs, really, as I'm working on these. All right, next slide. This painting is called Wild Strawberries, and it was another painting that felt like just purely an image that I turned into a thumbnail that I wanted to paint. But it did not have any kind of story attached to it. But I did, like, I love old sci-fi art and kind of pulp sci-fi covers, that type of stuff. And this kind of, I suppose, has some, can be a bit reminiscent of that type of art. It's kind of over the top, a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, like a little garish, I guess. And at the time, I had been reading a book, an older sci-fi novel, which I am blanking on the name now, but it had, it just got me thinking about these kind of landscapes and otherworldly, like, scenes with strange, sharp things poking out of the ground. And so I really enjoyed painting this. I think it's fun to have an excuse to make a odd landscape. This was one of those. And then next image, which I believe is my last painting here. This is a newer painting from earlier this year. And this had like I guess an emotional feel. When I made the thumbnail, I wanted it to feel a certain way, which is always kind of hard when you're starting a painting. It feels like it's impossible to tell which way it's going to go. I don't know if I'm going to get the lighting a certain way, how I want it. But I do feel like this came out fairly close to how I envisioned it. But this image of like almost like a strange creature with this voyeuristic feel, I suppose, of people looking at it. But it's just in its own little world. So anyways, that's all I have for my images, and I'll hand it on to the next person.
Amazing.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Those are very beautiful.
Thank you.
Ela, I think yours next.
So I sent my images yesterday, but I don't see them in the presentation, but that's not a problem. I can share my screen as well and display them this way.
Do y'all have my images?
Okay, now I won't be able to see you, so please stop me if there is anything I need to go back, correct, and I hope you can see my screen. But before I start talking about the images, maybe quickly about myself. My name is Ela Zdunek, in short, Ela. My parents were not really thinking forward when they gave me a name that's very, very difficult to pronounce to anybody who is not Polish. Currently, I'm living in Berlin. When I started creating seriously, I was in Finland. That's where COVID caught me. And that was a very, very difficult emotionally time, being very isolated, unsure what's going to happen, with family also very far. With also Finland, despite being in Europe, it's really behind the sea. So flying or potentially a boat, which is illegal, were the only ways out. So that gave me a lot of time to think, overthink, as well as start to express myself in a different way, this time artistically. I used to be a photographer predominantly, and that's still a technique that I absolutely love and that I cannot get rid of when I'm doing other things. But collaging was something very appropriate and suitable for that time, that stress and those emotions. Also because I could get random elements that I might not have really chosen myself, but it was up to me to do something with them. However, I went a bit backwards because I started to work digitally, and that was my truly main form of creation and expression for a very, very long time. And it's only now, in the last year, maybe year and a half, that I try also work in an analog way. Here, I need to confess that as a photographer, I'm really spoiled, and I'm very picky, and I have massive expectations. That's why analog does not always provide everything that I need, with shadows, with contrast, with things that I might want to change. But well, this is also the cards we are given, and that we need somehow to play. In general, I work predominantly in monochrome, in grayscale. From time to time, I do add elements in color, mostly red, but that is not really something that I like. So those are very specific elements and very specific stories, and also very specific commissions for me to do that. And in the whole creation, my favorite way of working, of showing things and telling stories, is being very, very figurative, with one or few elements that are surreal. Like in this piece, it's one of very, very recent ones where, in fact, we might be thinking of a very realistic piece, with the exception of the first figure, with the puppet-like form being led on strings. And here, similarly to Kristin, often what I'm trying to say is not always what people are reading. So that's why sometimes I even play with the audience and give them several endings or multiple endings to choose from, and showing things and telling stories that might be in a way contradictory. For instance, in this particular piece, that was inspired by elections around the world with very, very concerning results that strongly impact also women's rights. Here, there is that mark somewhere. However, with the first character being in a puppet-like form, we don't know, are they is she the leader or is she being steered? With the paper bags on heads, which is quite a common motive of people just listening or following without even listening. This one is slightly different in form. Was created for an exhibition also not long ago. And the simplicity and also certain confusion what technique is being used were the main factors and the main expectations here. So this is also a digital piece, but I really wanted to create the impression of paper, to make people stop, look twice, and try to think what it is exactly. So the title is Cold Case, linked to all the unsolved crimes. And as a collage, it's really multi-layered with several layers of stripes. So with this part on top that looks as torn out, in fact being placed on top, and the two figures, well, from the godfather of surrealism, René Magritte, with that irony on top, because those are black silhouettes without faces, and yet their non-existing faces are being covered. The reception was very interesting, with answers spinning from glue paper scissors to mixed media to painting. So people saw truly different techniques and different stories, from crime to comedy. So even more than I would have wished for. This is also one of recent ones, and here too there is very little from surrealism, only small elements. We might think that this is basically an everyday scene with commuting, with trains, with the lone passenger, and yet the weird creatures with cone heads. Some darker, some lighter, also leaving the question open. Are they fellow passengers? Are they waiting for this one that is coming? This very ominous shape from the first one in the row, the crooked one. Here I also heard many stories backed by own experiences, traumas, nightmares. So that's always a very interesting thing to know how do pieces resonate with the audience. This one, once again, going into this very contrasted or almost psychedelic. That this piece appeared by coincidence. So for a very long time, I had in my collection the image of this bottle at the very front, and I had no idea how to use it. As you could see, I do enjoy working with those black and white contrasting stripes, and that was a perfect element, but it never worked with anything. So this is a work of coincidence. I found the background and started adding those weird, very inhuman figures, also spinning from active to passive, and raising questions if lack of face means here lack of agency. But how do we interpret this figure, this main figure in the center walking? Is she, let's say, is she really actively trying to reach out for something, or is she being lured somewhere? Continuing, yet another type, and once again containing very little of a lot of realism, with only a tiny bit of surreal, irreal. This it is called Fire Thieves, and well, I fell in love with the background in this truly vintage Victorian style. However, looking at the floating elements, there is something much more futuristic. Here we also can ask many questions. Who is the main agent here? Because we are seeing a human form. However, she's surrounded by all those scissors that look like predatory animals here. On the other hand, these are inanimate objects. So once again, there are many routes one can take when reading this piece and when trying to make it their own. And the last one I'm going to show, this one going very strongly in the direction of German expressionism, strongly inspired by the silent films like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari or Metropolis, with obviously influence of Escher as well, with those infinite staircases. And once again, we are having a puppet-like form here, either running away from something or trying to get somewhere. So here, still the question: are they? Are they in control, or are they being the one that's controlled? With those several doors that are open and closed at the same time. So also very traditional in surrealist style, but also quite I would say quite modern in the message, and very much in line with the questions I'm always asking myself. Very well. That was the last piece I was.
Thank you so much, Ela. Very haunting. Vincent, you're next.
All right. I'm going to click share screen. Let me get this going here. Here we go. So this is just my website, and there's things here. Yeah, right. One I want to start with. So my geometric surrealism paintings, as I like to call them, iterations, have kind of taken me through all kinds of different things, but basically the ongoing theme here was sacred geometry mixed with realism in a dreamlike way. So I've done over 100 iterations. I kind of stopped counting after 100 or so, but this is one of the fairly recent. It was done in 2020. It's called 2020, and it was painted during lockdown, and so you can see how it's the year and the chaos kind of informed the painting. I actually kind of got into this with a fairly rough idea, and then it just kind of started morphing and things started being added and changed as the year progressed. So it was kind of cool how, yeah, I guess history kind of informed that piece, and it got a lot of recognition, and I really enjoyed it. So I kind of decided to start making more pieces like that. So I went on to make 2021, and it's pretty much the same idea, just kind of the zeitgeist of the year. A lot of like hidden imagery about like just things going on in the world, and just kind of my, I guess, emotional or subconscious kind of take on it all. Just, yeah, head burning. Pretty similar to the first one, with just the head explosion, just kind of different ways, you know, as it progressed. I actually did do a 2022, by the way. I just haven't uploaded. I haven't gotten a good photo of it yet. I actually have a hard time getting good photos of really large pieces. If anyone's got tips on that, let me know. But this was actually a smaller piece. It was my introduction to Modern Eden Gallery in San Francisco, and it was part of their Beyond Original show. So the idea was just to do like a modern take on a classical painting. So of course this was Creation of Adam by Michelangelo, and this was kind of my take. So it's actually pretty fun for me, because this one actually incorporated my two different series in one, in a way, because it has the geometric surrealism of Adam there looking all digital and holographic or whatever. But then also my other series, which I'll show to y'all guys here in a sec, it's the Atlas Metamorphosis, which kind of this whole thing that spawned from a lucid dream and created this whole world out of that. And so kind of just started taking some of the symbology from that world and mixing it into this godlike creature here with a beetle head. This one here is another newer one, kind of a new series within a series. This seems to be happening a lot with me too, where it's like I can't really stick to like one thing. I've noticed like a lot of other artists that's around me, like they're really good at like painting the same thing over and over hundreds of times for their whole life. And it seems to work really good for them because that helps them like establish this brand and this look and this thing. And I just apparently don't do that because I get bored really quickly. So as you can see, like things just change really dramatically from piece to piece. And you know, that could be good or bad, I guess, however you look at it. But I like to think there is, I guess, the consistency within it is just my ideas, my execution of those ideas, and of course some of the ongoing themes like the sacred geometry. So here I actually took a photo of downtown Houston and then imported a geometric bunny rabbit that I created in Cinema 4D, Photoshop those two images together, and then use that as a reference to paint from. So that was kind of fun. Then I did it again. I've done it a few times, pretty much done like a whole series or mini series of the same kind of thing, with the intent of someday doing like an augmented reality exhibit where you would actually be able to scan these pieces with your phone, and the 3D geometric bunny or cat in this instance would actually kind of start moving and on your phone. And so yeah, there's another one there with a big red fish and some more innuendos kind of in the background. It's just kind of some different stuff, more craziness. This is kind of a little more along the lines of stuff that I was doing for the last several years, which was kind of an animal. It was part of a series that I called Archetypes, and it was loosely based on, I guess, the idea like from Carl Jung of the archetypes. But I was kind of creating my own new archetypes of animals representing a personality, and then kind of just trying to link that with a sacred geometric element, usually levitating above them. So this was part of that kind of series. It also started going into like this crazy geometric glitch thing that here, if I can zoom in a little bit, you might be able to see all this crazy stuff. That was a lot of fun, I think, we'll put it that way. Then there's another more recent one on a pentagonal panel that I crafted, just challenging myself to create geometric panels of different shapes, and yeah, just doing crazy stuff like that. Mission more geometry and animals and you know, just cool spacey stuff. This one was kind of this was a commission, and it had the actual light waves of each of the different color spectrums or colors of light in the light spectrum of white light. You know, white light was proven by Isaac Newton to be just a mixture of all colors of light. So I decided on this commission to break down that white light into its respective wavelengths of light. So actually, like you can see infrared, closest to it would be red, and it's the most wide. And then ultraviolet would be this violet color. So that's on the opposite end of the spectrum. So that was the most frequent. That's kind of cool. I always like kind of incorporating a little bit of science or something like that, or something just kind of, you know, interesting, something to add to it. Just gonna kind of flip through a few of these. Honestly, it's like I feel like each one of these pieces could be explained ad nauseum, and maybe it's easier to just kind of like thumb through them and let you kind of just look at them for a minute. And I don't know if anyone wants to like ask me something about it. I can talk your head off about it. This one I call Starman, kind of after a David Bowie song, but obviously very, very strange, very surreal. Mother. This one's Fox Hollow. A lot of my geometric stuff kind of alludes to this idea of like a holographic universe, that there's a maybe higher dimensional reality that we are just in the shadows of. So I'm constantly alluding to those kind of ideas of like the holographic principle and things like that. Yeah, so lots of animals, lots of levitating polyhedra. That just kind of seems to be par for the course. This one I like a lot. I call that a fleshy facade, a cryptic charade. Love that title. It's just like a random like nonsense phrase that I remember me and my buddy came up with in high school while we were like sketching crazy stuff, you know, in class while we were supposed to be working on things art related. So it's always fun to draw from the past, you know, those random like references that nobody else gets. You know, it's kind of fun. This one's the nature of ego and self. Need no explanation there. This is a fairly new one. A magician never tells his secrets. That's what I titled this piece. It's always fun when people ask me, so what's this piece about? And I'll just tell them, well, a magician never tells his secrets. And then I'm done. And it's the easiest conversation I ever had about my art.
Vincent, so maybe I can ask you, and then we can go around the horn with the other
Sure.
artists. Your image is similar to all the other artists. They're very consistent, so it sort of feels like you're world building in a sense. So
that's great to hear.
I'm wondering, you know, is this like a snapshot? Like when you're building a piece of art, is this a snapshot that you're visiting, you know, on occasion, or is this sort of a world that's like always in the back of your head, you know, that you always
Yeah,
have one foot in?
I almost kind of feel like it's both. That's kind of if that even makes sense, I don't know. But it's certainly like you said, kind of a world that's evolving. Like as I progress through it, it kind of feels like, you know, like with each piece, I'm being informed more and more about the world. You know, the Atlas Metamorphosis, again, it kind of keeps coming back to like this piece here that I have up is another one of these coalescent type pieces, and that's actually even been the name of one of my mini series. Is called Coalescence because it's again this idea of like this grand unified series where I finally like get all of my crazy illustrations of the Atlas Metamorphosis concept world mixed in with the sacred geometry, surrealism, realist kind of style painting. There's definitely a world that's being built, and I'm still trying to make sense of it. It's much like what was said earlier about kind of like the piece informs me in a way, you know, and I like that. I'm happy to hear that I'm not the only one, and it makes sense, especially as far as surrealists, that that it would be that way. I feel like that's probably how a lot of surrealists were, is that you kind of have like a basic idea of something that you want to do, but you're not really sure why. Sometimes maybe you have an idea, but a lot of times you don't. And then it's like as the piece progresses, it kind of speaks to you. And even sometimes when it's after it's done, yeah, it's like talking to people and hearing their interpretation of it actually informs me on like what the piece means. Which I want to say it was maybe Rene Magritte who said that, you know, when asked about it, this kind of subject, he was basically like, well, he didn't like explaining his art from what I could tell about any of the quotes from him about it. But one thing that he said too that resonated with me was that, you know, once the piece of art is made, it's like it's the public's now. It's no longer like me to tell you what it's about. It's like whatever I did, like I got it in there, and whatever the world makes of it, that's what it is. Because whatever I meant, if that's not what y'all are getting, then that's not what it is. You know, almost kind of that pipe thing too, maybe. But I think there's a strong kernel of truth to that. You know, it's like if in the end what you were going for is not what people are seeing, then it really doesn't matter if that's what you thought it was, because what it is what it is. You know.
Yeah. Ella, do you feel the same way about interpretations, or you know, it also feels like your art is, you know, you're sort of world building. It feels very consistent. It seems like you're going to a place and, you know, building a whole environment.
That's true, but I think I'm on a constant journey. So when I come to a place and something speaks to me, then there is a lot to say for me. And I might work in a very similar style or reuse elements. And then comes a moment when I feel that that story is complete or that I want to move somewhere else. And here, and that's often I think independent on me. So often it happens without my active. Without me acting on it, but there comes a moment when I feel there is time for something new. I might bring souvenirs with me, so certain elements, angles, compositions that I might use in with different characters in a different place with a different message. But I very, very much agree. There is something that requires me to be the voice or to represent it visually, and when it is satisfied, then we can move on.
Wonderful.
So if I
Yeah.
may, sometimes even when I look at pieces from some previous universe, previous location, I very often feel even disconnected from them, even though they might be relatively recent and obviously made by me. But I feel that story is complete now. And now I'm speaking in a different language and telling a completely different tale.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes
And
it's kind of nice to
sorry.
just, like hand it off to the world at some point. It's like when you're done with a piece of art, a lot of times, you're kind of just like, now I want to say it might be Leonardo da Vinci who said that a piece of art is never completed, it's just abandoned. And at some point you just kind of say, you know what, this is it, I got to move on, and this is good enough, or this is as good as I can possibly get it at this point in my life and my skill ability. And then it's up to the world to say, hey, okay, this is good, or this is what it means. And again, if it's like, if I didn't get the point across, well, then that's the project for next time. It's like, okay, well, I need to work on the message I'm trying to deliver if it's not being conveyed. Yeah, this is kind of a fun one. Pufferfish hot air balloon ride over white sands, because why not? I mean, nothing better than that, right? Looks like a longhorn who probably ate some magic mushrooms. A luxurious geometry on a red sky, a very anomalous thing that I like to do a lot too, possibly pointing at aliens. Here's some more sacred geometry, Vesca Pisces, Vesca Pisces, 2 circles there, bisecting, showing his sacred geometric interior. Lots of crazy stuff. Let's see here. That one was a cool one. Girl on Swing. This one was very Rene Magritte-ish. I was definitely very much influenced by him as well. Honestly, probably my favorite surrealist was Magritte. Of course, I think I started off like everyone with Dali being the most probably pop culture kind of guy. But once I discovered Magritte, I was like, well, this is the real master. I think he was the best of that era, just because I love his focus. And even though there was that kind of like nonsensicalness to his stuff, it just felt like there was something going on there, like there was a meaning. And again, like he didn't seem like he wanted to talk about that very much, but that's what's so appealing about Rene Magritte's work and people like him, was that it seemed like there was still like some kind of like just even hard to actually put into words kind of message behind his work. Oh yeah, so here's actually the first time I tried recreating another artist's work, and this was a commission. One of my collectors asked me to do my interpretation of Son of Man by Rene Magritte. So me being the scientific kind of guy I am, I took that very seriously, and I like measured out exactly like the proportions of where the head and everything laid, gridded that out. But I also learned about the piece and found out that that's actually him behind that apple So that's why when I painted it, I actually painted a representation of my face behind the apple. And then also going into the sacred geometry, it was a lot of fun getting into this. The apple actually has this vector equilibrium 64 tetrahedron version of a torus, the torus shape that you see inside the apple that actually has that core shape, which is all over the universe, and a very, very interesting geometry that seems to have a lot of hidden properties that we're still learning about. Yeah.
So,
I guess I stop screen share.
thank you
Let me
for
know
sharing.
whenever I've gone
Yeah,
too far.
thank you for sharing, Vincent. So Kristen, you're exploring mythologies in your artwork. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you're balancing sort of the universal myths that, you know, we all grew up potentially reading about versus, you know, telling your own
Sure.
personal story.
Right. So I think for at least for me, oftentimes what happens is the visual image will come first, something that I want to paint, and usually it's often driven by just a very like a urge to paint something that would be a pleasure to paint, I suppose. That's often something really specific, like a certain texture or lighting or color. But the image will kind of suggest the story after the fact. So, for example, the goat, that was I believe my second image. Like I said, that was originally just, I wanted to paint this kind of milky, creamy colored fur, that kind of iridescent bubble texture. Because often when I paint, it's really, it's the painting process, the physical painting process that is the driving force. It's because it's such a pleasure to paint. But I enjoy most painting figurative pieces, and they just seem to collect stories on their own. So since I was homeschooled, and when I was homeschooled with my sister, and we read all kinds of stuff, and lots of times homeschoolers end up on their own, just reading a lot of library books and stuff that's maybe not going to be the general reading material for a teenager. So I ended up with a lot of these kind of stories in my head that I think most other people know about as well. So it's the common, since a myth is a common story and something that you can kind of share, and yet it's often tends to be very vague on what it really is supposed to mean. I think that works well with a painting that is supposed to be something that draws you in, and you may enjoy looking at it, but it pulls you in to experience it kind of time after time, and having a potential story that it may be about is another layer of like a potential meaning that a person can draw from that. And like I said, I don't usually start it with as like an illustrator would, to say I would like to paint a picture of Leda and the Swan, and how could I do that most accurately or something like that. Usually it's like I would like to paint a picture of this certain flower with a certain kind of texture to it or something like that. And as I'm making a sketch, it'll be like, oh, this is Leda, or this is something. And it seems to just come to it on its own. I like that statement of, it seems like an idea is often there and asking to get out. And if you leave yourself kind of open to this mental state that allows you to associate ideas with each other without too much judgment at the beginning, they'll kind of collect a lot of rich interplay between these ideas that that aren't intentionally put in. But it does seem like other people can, when there's enough of this kind of, it's almost like a compost, I think, like a compost of ideas that gets layered onto each other. And then there's enough potential meaning in that piece that other people seem able to draw that out for themselves without me kind of dictating what it's supposed to mean, or if it's supposed to be about something specific. I actually really enjoy art that is often much more, I suppose I'd call didactic, and intentional about what it is supposed to mean. But when I make art, I just can't seem to do that and create something that feels alive. So it's usually a process that's very organic and very, it comes of its own, an unconscious kind of process for creating the image.
I had this image of like somebody with a butterfly net just sort of capturing concepts as they're
That's
running along.
exactly. I think that's a perfect description of what of how the idea is it's not so much made but caught.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Ela, do you start with an image like Kristen does, or is it more of a feeling or a concept, or how does it start? Does it just sort of appear on the page, or just wondering about your process?
Either a concept or an image. So very often some idea appears, and something that I want to express, and in other cases I just see some element that in a way is a catalyst to this for the story to develop. So this here there is no one rule, but I hardly ever come sit down with a ready piece in my mind, and my part is only to put things together. So it always there's always this tiny little flicker, and then it develops on its own, and very often in very surprising directions.
Yeah.
How about you, Vincent? Is it like a finished image appears magically, or it develops over time as well?
It's actually both for me. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I guess I use different methods for whatever is appropriate at the time. You know, especially I guess when I get like commission pieces, of course, that also kind of tends to have a direction. And a lot of times it seems like for me, like the naming my surrealism paintings iteration seems quite pertinent, because it was like kind of like an iterative process where like I just kind of started with the idea of like, oh, I'm just going to put sacred geometry into some of these new paintings, and then those kind of just turned into like experiments where I kind of kept adding onto it, to where like it was like almost like the thinking was iterative, so there wasn't much thought into each piece, but over time, you know, there's like this concept that builds, and it kind of keeps building on itself and getting more complex, and the layers of meaning and the different kind of roads that it takes all kind of develop. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of both. You know, when I'm coming up with ideas, it's actually a lot like Kristen, what she said. I kind of cool to hear that like somebody else does it pretty much exactly the same way, because what I'll do is I'll just do a bunch of thumbnail sketches like on like a 9x12 sketchbook, you know, and I'll go like 3 across, 3 down, and I'll just fill that page with like 9 little thumbnail sketches, and I'll do that for a page or 2 or so, however many I want to do, kind of just like drain my brain is really what it kind of feels like. I'm just kind of letting things out, letting things happen, making some decisions here, and letting things just kind of happen in this small thumbnail world. And then that allows me to then come back to those ideas, like, and then be like, oh, okay, this one's a good idea. This one's crap. You know, this one may be good. And then usually I'll pick the best one, and those usually are the better ones. And yeah, so most of my work, if not all of it, starts off with like a thumbnail sketch and then kind of just advances from there. But yeah, sometimes it's pretty random, but a lot of times I do feel like I have like I'm in the driver's seat and I am trying to steer it somewhere. And I have like a concept usually of like what it is I'm trying to do. And I actually don't like that. I kind of want to loosen up more. It'd be nice if I didn't have to think about it so much. Like that sounds nice to me to like, oh, you actually don't have to think. You can just let the masterpiece roll out of you, you know, but I don't know.
Can you can you tell me a little bit more about the sacred geometry? Is that just you like the way it looks, or is it the concept behind it, or both?
So both, it started by just kind of like those look cool, you know, and I was like, those look cool. I want to put that in my art. And also I was kind of thinking if I got good at painting those polyhedrons, then I would be a better painter. That was kind of the thing too. Is like those look really challenging. Those look really hard to paint. They are. And so doing them often was like, okay, I'm going to get really good at form and lighting and things like that. And it was all kind of initially in the name of just being a better artist and being more skilled, and just yeah, doing something that I thought looked cool. But once I did that, then I actually, you know, was like researching online, and I started falling down this massive rabbit hole of like how sacred geometry is interconnected into all these different disciplines and science and the macrocosm and the microcosm and just all these like similarities of things and proportions. Of course, the golden proportion, you know, Fibonacci sequence and pi. Obviously, that's probably one of the most popular. But you know, the golden ratio is everywhere as well, and it's just so fascinating. And it kind of also gave me a thesis, which was to like to hone in on that idea that everything is interconnected via this geometry, and it's how I can express that. Yeah.
Thank you. Ella, I was wondering about Kristen mentioned something earlier about interpretations sort of informing her work or not, you know, of other people, and Vincent mentioned that also. I was wondering how you feel about interpretations or people adding meaning, or if you're, you know, it's easy for people to sort of get where you're getting at with most of your pieces.
I always like listening to people's interpretation, because that's always also a signal how coherent I am with my message. So I also like to leave the ending open and to allow for different interpretations, spinning from even labeling the character as a hero or as a villain, and as the whole development as positive or negative. That's these are things that I always enjoy, and whenever I talk about my art, I always give those hints. But here, this looks like this. But if we take into consideration what's in the background, it might be read completely different. So in a way, I'm giving the audience a lot of very vast and diverse choice, but some interpretations I do choose beforehand. So there is so all the pieces are quite personal, and even when they develop independently, and even when they lead me, this is still my subconscious. So something that does impact me, be it internally or the external factors. So I still feel like in a director seat with maybe not with having maybe a more abstract script and not a very literal one with everything explained. But listening to others, what they see is always something fascinating, and that applies to the technique, to what I'm showing, to the composition, to the interpretation of characters, and even what might happen next. That's always incredible.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject there and say that I think that's an interesting kind of crossroads that surrealism is in, because, you know, kind of like abstract and realism put together in a way. That's kind of how I look at it sometimes, because it's like, you know, realism, I'm giving you the whole image, I'm telling you the whole story. abstract, I'm not really giving you an image or a story. I'm giving you a feeling, right? Or something to convey a feeling. And I feel like surrealism is kind of like an intersection of those things, because I'm giving you a story or maybe some of a story, but I'm leaving all these questions in an abstract manner, things that, you know, kind of strangely juxtapose things that maybe don't make sense or just not possible in the real world. So it's kind of like we're setting a stage, but we're allowing people to play, to be the actors on that stage, right? And to kind of create some of the narrative. Like there's obviously a stage set, so you know you have to play by the rules of the stage, right? But it's not like the whole script has been completely written.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, like even the name surrealism. I mean, the whole core is realism. It is built on something that is known. So even when you go to an improv theater and allow the audience to decide who are you and how the play is going to develop, all the topics, elements, ideas will come from the real world, and they might be juxtaposed, like in your pieces, this geometric animal playing with a real one, but so they are in a dialogue, and that dialogue might be absurd, but there is some kind of a connection. So there is a reason why they are there together, and why they have some kind of understanding that they continue to talk to each other.
So one of the hardest things I have with when people ask me, like, you know, what is this piece about? It's like, I almost don't want to answer that question. Like, again, I start feeling like Renee Magritte. I'm like, I just don't want to give you any answers, because then I'm going to ruin it for you, you know? And sometimes, a lot of times I've even said that. I'll just be like, well, I can tell you what it means to me, but I want to hear what it means to you first. Sometimes I'll just do that because I really am curious, and I don't want to like taint what their brain was picking up, you know, because they may have had something really good that I wanted to hear, but if I tell them, and you know, that they may have lost that idea, or they may not feel like it's valid to say. So yeah, that's always, I think, just the tricky part. It's a hard part of being a surrealist, is like, how much do I reveal, and how much should I allow just people to figure it out, and how do I do that in a nice way without sounding like an asshole, you know? It's like, well, you figure it out, buddy, you know.
So you tell me what is it about. Yes.
Jay, if this is Doug Shear, Artist Talk on Art president, speaking without the benefit of a camera tonight, mysteriously, just to say that out of the 1,200 plus panels and dialogues that we've done in our past at ATOA over 50 years, we were benefited. At one point, we had Amy Ernst, the granddaughter of Max Ernst, as an executive director for a couple of years. And then she stayed on the board. And as a result, we had, I'm thinking, 4, possibly 5 panels on the subject of surrealism. None of them, however, delved into contemporary surrealism anywhere like what you've just done tonight. So I'm just commending you that it created new ground for us, despite all the things we've done. That's all, just that comment.
Oh, well, thank you, Doug. Do we have time to open it up for the audience for any questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. Feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat.
No takers? That's odd. Okay.
Oh, Maruna. So Maruna asked how long it takes for you to make one piece of art, and when do you feel like it is done for Vincent and Ela?
Oh, that's difficult. That very much depends on the complexity, and also there are pieces that I think a long time about. So I do count it as working on them without physically sitting down and putting all the pieces together. But it never happens for me to just sit down and continue without interruptions, but it's usually a couple of hours to at least have it in a form that I might be happy with. But there are pieces that take longer, like a couple of days. And when I do feel when they are ready, I think, well, I'm getting better at it. I used to overdo them and add far too much, but now I think it's when I look from the distance at the composition. If there is something from the sacred geometry where that attracts the eye exactly where I want the audience to look at first, and then continue further.
Vincent, you're muted.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, so I clock a lot of my art, not all the time, most of it though. And yes, some pieces I've lucked out at getting done at like within like 20 hours or so. Most of them at least 50. Some of my best pieces about 150 to 200 hours. Oh, and like I said earlier, you just abandon it at some point. You just finally decide, okay, I put too much time and effort into this, and it's good enough, and I got to move on. Somebody mentioned there too. Can you talk more about surrealism as a movement?
Vincent, I'll let you take
that's
that
the
one.
that's the historical emphasis, which, as I said, we visited a number of occasions in the past. What I think made tonight special was it's very much contemporary, and that's very refreshing, especially at the 100th anniversary. I would like to mention, before I say thank you, that we're about to break for the vacation, for the holidays, returning on Monday, January 13th, with two interesting things. One is we're focusing on an exhibition which is both public art and traveling, called Insufficient Memory, which addresses the many murders of gay individuals and memorializes them across the United States, such as you may remember Matthew Shepard, moderated by NYU professor Sean Fader and featuring 4 artists with him. So the event is at 7 p.m. on Monday, January 13th. It also commemorates for us, since we're at our 50th year, A2A's very first panel, which was held on January 10th, 1974. I know because I was there, called Whatever Happened to Public Art? I hope you enjoy your holidays and that we see you on January 13th, the first of 19 events in our winter and spring semester. And now let me thank Jay Gidwitz for a marvelous job of moderating and putting things in context, as well as to our organizer, Jacqueline Sferra Rada, and the artists tonight, Vincent Fink, Kristin Kwan, and Ela Zdunek. And good night to everyone. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful panel.